History tells the story of the world and of our lives. Sometimes that history goes bump in the night. Broadcasting from the center of oddity and the supernatural in Central Florida, it's the History Goes Bump podcast.
Hello, you spooktacular people. Welcome to this 507th episode of the History Goes Bump podcast. Ghost tours for the theater of the mind. I am your host, Diane.
And this is Kelly.
Kelly, on this episode, we're going to be looking at another one of these haunted hotels, and this one has got a lot of haunts. As a matter of fact, it's a favorite of the ghost hunters, especially Amy Bruni.
Excellent.
And that's Mount Washington Hotel. Before we get into that, we want to welcome into the spooktacular crew Brianna with one N, Susie with a ZY, Emily, and Evelyn.
Thank you so much for joining our Facebook group.
And now this moment in Oddity.
There is an award that is celebrated every year, although it's not the Oscars nor the Emmys. It is the Hambone Award. This award was named after a dog who suffered from hypothermia due to being stuck in a refrigerator. The dog ended up eating an entire ham prior to being released. Unexpected accidents can happen to our furred, feathered, or scaled companions, and Nationwide Insurance decided to raise awareness of all the accidents that our critter kids can encounter. Each year, the competition features pets who survived harrowing circumstances with the help of their pet parents as well as medical professionals. The event has been around for 15 years. With Nationwide insuring over 1 million pets, there are plenty of competitors vying for the award each year. The winner of the Hambone Award receives a trophy, gift card, and Nationwide donates money to a pet charity of the owner's choice. Our pets mean the world to us, but winning a competition for surviving the most dire, death-defying disaster certainly is odd.
Hi, I'm Vanessa, host of Fabled, a podcast that explores cozy, creepy lore and mysteries. Did you know that the legendary mystery writer Agatha Christie disappeared in real life for 11 days? Or that there's a legend that Edgar Allan Poe's Annabel Lee still wanders a cemetery in Charleston? Fabled explores these stories and so many more, taking deep historical dives into legends and folklore. Find Fabled wherever you listen to podcasts. And say hello on social media at Fable Collective.
And now, this month in history.
In the month of October, on the 5th in 1921, the first radio broadcast of the World Series took place. Station WJZ Radio in Newark, New Jersey had only hit the airwaves a mere 4 days prior. Their management wanted to cause a big sensation by being the first radio station to broadcast a World Series game. The teams that went head-to-head for the broadcast were the New York Giants and the New York Yankees. This was the first appearance of the Yankees at the World Series. The broadcast was voiced by Tommy Cohen in what would be a very unique fashion. Mr. Cohen was not at the game, but instead was in the radio studio. He stood in front of a microphone while holding a telephone to his ear. On the other end of the line was a newspaper employee giving Cohen the play-by-play from the ballpark. As basic as all that sounds, Tommy Cohen wanted to impress the management and listeners with his production. On the day before the game, Cohen went to his inventor friend, Thomas Edison, and asked if he could borrow Edison's phonograph and records. These were used to play background music during the World Series broadcast. The next day, the Giants defeated the Yankees, and the broadcast was a great success. Clearly, Tommy Cohen hit it out of the park.
Omni Hotels and Resorts own a long list of haunted hotels, and they embrace that reputation. One of their hotels is the Mount Washington Hotel in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire. This is a beautiful location surrounded by the White Mountain National Forest, so it is no wonder that the rich would make this one of their playgrounds. Some of the grandest hotels ever built in American history were built here. Perhaps it is the link to the Gilded Age that has locked in specters to this establishment. Join us as we share the history and hauntings of the Mount Washington Hotel.
Bretton Woods is a village in the town of Carroll, New Hampshire. Carroll came from a land grant awarded by King George III in 1772 to Sir Thomas Wentworth and 82 other men. Wentworth named the village after his ancestral home in Yorkshire, England, which was called Bretton Hall. The village is surrounded by the White Mountain National Forest. The Presidential Range is part of the White Mountains, and the tallest peak in this range is Mount Washington. As a matter of fact, Mount Washington is the highest peak in the northeastern United States. The indigenous people who lived here called the mountain Agiochuk, which means the place of the Great Spirit or concealed one. The Abenaki people believed that the tops of tall mountains were the dwelling places of gods, and so they would not climb Mount Washington out of deference to the gods they believed resided there. When European settlers came, they built taverns to meet the needs of visitors to the area, and these eventually became hotels that grew into the grand hotels that the White Mountains became known for.
Joseph Stickney was born in 1840 in Concord, New Hampshire. In 1860, he became interested in anthracite coal mining, and he formed the company Stickney, Conyngham and Company. Stickney made a fortune in the coal mining business before he was even 30. He and his partner in the coal business, John N. Conyngham, bought Mount Pleasant House in the White Mountains from lumberman John T. G. Levitt in 1881. Mount Pleasant House had been built in 1875 and was one of 3 grand hotels in Bretton Woods at the time. This hotel started off as a box-like structure with 40 rooms, but it would grow to become one of the largest and finest of the grand hotels. After Stickney bought it, he added a 4th story, added several buildings, and brought in the latest amenities like private baths. By 1894, Stickney had bought out his partners and was sole owner of Mount Pleasant House. He bought more land and planned to expand, which included an electric power plant that could provide power for 750 lights, a 400-foot artesian well, an elevator powered by water, a water tank for the laundry, a bowling alley, a blacksmith shop, a golf course, tennis courts, and a private lake, which he named for his wife, Carolyn, whom he married in 1894. 2 rail lines brought guests to the hotel.
Stickney eventually decided to build another hotel, and he named it the Mount Washington Hotel, which today is one of the few remaining grand hotels of the Gilded Age. Henry Flagler recommended that Stickney hire architect Charles Alling Gifford to design Mount Washington. Gifford also designed the Jekyll Island Club, where in 1910 a group of elites gathered to develop the Federal Reserve System. Gifford's design was in the Renaissance Revival style. Ground was broken in 1900, and Stickney spared no expense in the construction. The hotel would cost $1.7 million to build. Kelly, that's $52 million in today's money.
Good grief.
This was definitely a grand hotel. Mount Washington was built with a steel network, and a complicated heating and plumbing system were installed, all of which were uncommon at the time. 250 Italian craftsmen worked on the structure, installing 2,000 doors, 12,000 windows, and 11 miles of plumbing pipes.
Oh my goodness.
The interior featured Tiffany stained glass, intricate Italian plasterwork, and crystal chandeliers. There was a conservatory with an acoustic dome. The hotel is striking with its white painted exterior of stucco and granite, crowned by red roofs. Got their paint scheme from Hotel del Coronado.
Apparently.
Which, interestingly enough, we're going to have a story about that in our listener stories at the end of the show.
Excellent. The grand opening was hosted on July 28, 1902. The hotel boasted a staff of 350 people. As many as 50 trains came through Bretton Woods every day, bringing the wealthy and famous to stay, which included 3 U.S. presidents, Thomas Edison, Joan Crawford, Princess Margaret, and Winston Churchill. Important historic events took place here. Some of the listeners may have heard the term Bretton Woods in regards to the Bretton Woods system of money and finance. The Bretton Woods International Monetary Conference was hosted at Mount Washington in 1944 with delegates from 44 nations. That meeting set up the World Bank and International Monetary Fund and designated the U.S. dollar as the main currency of international exchange. The documents making all these items official were signed in the Gold Room off the hotel lobby. This system, which was meant to stabilize economies and prevent another Great Depression, and was built on conversion of dollars with gold, was ended in 1971 when President Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard. That made it possible to print money without any thought as to debt and such. Needless to say, leaving the gold standard has helped to put America into... Wait, let me check, because this literally changes every second.
Kelly, I've got it right here. So the national debt right now, and this is on Saturday morning, September 30th, 33,126,476,376,937
In debt.
in debt.
Great.
So basically $33.1 trillion in debt. So to put that into perspective, since, Kelly, we are the government here in America, there are about 331.9 million people in America. So each of you listening right now, this is you individually. So if you've got a family of 4, this is times 4, $99,734. You're all in debt for that. And that's aside from your personal debt.
Wonderful.
Stickney didn't get to enjoy the success of his new hotel for long. He died on December 21st, 1903 from a heart attack at the age of 64. And he left both Mount Pleasant and Mount Washington to his wife, Carolyn. She remarried in 1913 to French Prince, hold on to your butts, everybody, here we go, Aimon de Fusini-Lusage. I hope that was pretty close to the right way to say it. It's a crazy name.
I'm still holding on to my butt. Wait, I need my microphone. Hang on.
Which made her a princess, so she married up. The Stickneys had no children, so when Carolyn passed in 1936, she left the hotels to her nephew, F. Foster Reynolds. He decided to demolish the Mount Pleasant house in 1939. A motel now stands on the property, so it went from one of the grandest hotels around to a motel. Mount Washington Hotel closed in 1942 because of World War II. A Boston syndicate bought it in 1944 and reopened it, and then sold it 11 years later, in 1955, to Mr. and Mrs. Morris J. Fleischer of Philadelphia, and they ran it until 1969. Then the Mount Washington Development Company acquired it at that time, and they developed the nearby Bretton Woods ski area. This company consolidated the original Stickney estate. In 1975, the Bretton Woods Corporation acquired the property, and they got it listed on the National Register of Historic Places. The woodlands around the property were sold to the United States government, who founded the White Mountain National Forest. By 1986, the United States Department of the Interior gave the hotel a National Historic Landmark designation, which is pretty amazing. It's not just registered as a historic place, along with the 1896 Bretton Arms Inn, which is a Victorian inn located on the hotel grounds.
A group of New Hampshire businessmen joined forces and purchased the property in 1991. CNL Lifestyle Properties, Inc. bought the hotel in 2006, and they began a major renovation on the property that cost $90 million. They sold to the current owners, Omni Hotels and Resorts, in December of 2015. Omni had already been managing the hotel since 2009. There are approximately 600 year-round employees, which grows to over 1,000 in winter. The hotel features the 4-diamond main dining room with a casual yet sophisticated dining experience, and Stickney's restaurant, which features a cozy setting to enjoy delicious American cuisine.
Based on the stories we've heard from so many sources, Mount Washington Hotel has to be one of the most haunted hotels in the United States. The most haunted room in the hotel is room 314, the Princess's Room, or Carolyn Stickney Suite. This had been Carolyn's old suite, hence the name. She likes to stay in her suite where her 4-poster maple bed is still located, and her apparition has been seen numerous times by staff and guests. The sighting started in 1936 after her death, mostly during the winter months when only caretakers and managers were there. They would watch her as she descended the stairs for dinner, perhaps on her way to the single-person table in the dining room that is still set for her every evening. Often guests report smelling a floral perfume in the middle of the night in the princess room, and sometimes when they wake up, they see Carolyn sitting at the end of the bed brushing her hair. Items will go missing and then show up in the strangest places. The lights also turn themselves off and on. One of the weirdest things to happen occurred when a group of employees were getting their photo taken in front of the hotel's veranda, and the photo captured a woman in the window of the princess's room when no one was staying in there. That bed that's still in her room is a bed that she would travel with, because she spent a lot of her time over in France because she was married to a French prince, but every single summer she would come over because she liked to spend her summers at Mount Washington. So she would bring her bed with her.
Oh, my word.
So that would go back and forth with her. So the fact it's still being used in that room is just amazing.
That's incredible. Must be very well made to withstand all that travel.
Yeah. And then the other really fun thing about her is, they see her coming down the stairs.
Right.
To go to the dining room. She had like this, they called it a secret balcony. I think it was just like a private balcony. And I don't know if people couldn't really see her up there, but she'd like to watch the women come in so that she could see what they were wearing, because she wanted to make sure she had the best outfit on. So then she'd go change if she needed to
goodness. Reminds me of the little private balcony in Katazan at the Ringling property.
Yes.
Where they could stand and overlook the whole living room area where the piano sat and everything. Music plays on its own in the ballroom. About the ballroom, somebody said, as I walked into the ballroom late one evening on a night where there was no performers, I heard the faint sounds of an orchestra playing. I thought a rehearsal was going on, and I went to see who it was. There was no one there. No one. As I walked away from the side of the stage, the lights suddenly went out, and the music got louder. It was surreal and very, very scary. I would have thought it was really cool. I ran to the light switch and saw that it had been turned off. I turned it back on and the lights went on for a second, and then the switch turned down on its own. The entire time the music kept playing. I ran out and found security and told them what happened. They went in to investigate and found nothing. No music and no problem with the lights.
Ghost hunters visited the hotel in both 2008 and 2012. A lot of the stuff that they got were disembodied sounds of footsteps, other kinds of noises that they couldn't explain. They did catch some EVP. They had an audio of a female voice. The voice speaks over and seemingly responds to the voices of the crew. When asked direct questions, the same voice can be heard on EVP recordings responding in muffled sentences. When asked, "Princess, are you there?" there's an EVP that seems to be saying, "Hello, is there someone there?" Then when asked, "Princess, can you at least let us know you're in here?" the equipment plays a voice replying with, "Of course I'm in here. Where are you?" So it's almost
wow.
If they are talking to Carolyn, she can't see them.
Right.
This was not only one of Grant's favorite places to investigate, so it was his second to the last episode before leaving Ghost Hunters the first time, but this is Amy Bruni's favorite location. She hosts a strange escapes group there every year, and she's been more times than she can count. She wrote the book Life with the Afterlife, which Kelly picked up for me, and I've almost finished reading it. And I wanted to share one of the stories that she has in here on page 151. Once Adam was leading an investigation in one of the old turret suites that are no longer allowed into. They are in such disrepair that it's not safe to be in there. He was telling the group about safety precautions, and while he spoke, he noticed a woman staring at him. She had black hair, was wearing a red sweatshirt and gray sweatpants, and was holding a Diet Coke bottle. He said, "Can I help you? You can go and investigate." "No," she said, "I want to stay with you." "Okay," Adam responded. "You heard the rules, right?" "No," she replied. He told her where it was safe to go, and "Don't go in this room," he said, trying to make light of the awkward exchange, "because you could trip and fall through the skylight and die." She looked at him. "That'd be okay," she said. At that point, Adam noticed that the soda bottle she was holding was filthy. "Hold on a second," he said, and turned his head to check on some people investigating in another room. As he did, he realized the woman hadn't been wearing the lanyard we gave to all attendees, and that she must have been crashing the event. "Hey, can I see?" he said as he turned his head back to her. She was gone, and there was no way she would have had time to make it out the door to the suite, and no way she could have done it silently, even if she had snuck out. The door and the floor were far too noisy. Maybe she was who they were searching for all along. Hearing about that experience still gives me goosebumps.
I love that.
That is very cool. And now a little break for a word about one of our sponsors. Now, in the process of me looking up stuff, I came upon this 2019 article entitled "A Mount Washington Ghost Story," written on the Classy Girls Wear Pearls. There you go, Kelly. Classy Girls Wear Pearls.
I have pearls.
Website that was created by Sarah Vickers. I pulled the story and everything, and then I realized that Amy also had shared this story in her book. But
you were saying, this sounds vaguely familiar.
Yes, but I wanted to share it from Sarah's perspective. It's lengthy, and throughout, Sarah comments that she really didn't believe in ghosts. She had visited the hotel many times and even stayed in room 314 several times without so much as a peep from Carolyn or any ghost. She's friends with Amy Bruni and attended the Strange Escapes at the hotel that year. After joining in on a few EVP sessions and an Estes session, Sarah remained unconvinced about paranormal activity in the hotel. All she could hear were scratchy sounds, so she's like, I don't really think there was anything being said. When it came to the Estes method, she felt like they really weren't getting answers to the questions that were being asked, so she's like, yeah, I don't think I really believe this stuff. That was until she and her fiancé got back to their room. She writes, Keel and I headed back to our room shortly afterwards for a bite to eat and to get ready for bed. We had a family suite with 2 bedrooms and a living room separating the bedrooms. Dan was in one room and we had the other room with Harry. When we stay at hotels, we always leave the bedroom door open a crack with a light on for Harry. He sleeps in a portable crib next to our bed. We were snuggled up in bed for at least half an hour when the bathroom light went out. Dan, leave that light on, that's for Harry, Keel called out. There was no answer. Suddenly, the door slammed. We were really confused that he would shut the door and turn off the lights on us. We assumed it was a practical joke. Keel got out of bed to open the door and turn on the light. Dan was nowhere to be found. We opened up the door to his room and he was in bed, unaware that anything had happened. We asked him several times if he closed the door on us and he responded that he never got out of bed. In that same instant, Amy had just texted me to say that there had been some activity in suite 314. The ghost had been saying Keel's name over and over again on the EVP recording, and we should go in there. At the time, she wasn't in the room. Her friend Grant Wilson, another cast member of Ghost Hunters, was hosting the session in the room, and no one knew who we were. The group just found it interesting that the ghost was repeating the same name.
Wow.
We were admittedly pretty freaked out. We tested the door a few times to see if maybe it shut easily, was on a slant, etc., but the carpet was too thick for it to have closed on its own. In a frantic state of mind, we headed back to Carolyn's suite in our pajamas. I didn't bother getting dressed. When we arrived, the lights were off and people were sitting all around the room. Grant greeted us and began to tell the ghost that Keel was there and asked if he would like to say anything. A woman was repeating what she heard from the headphones again, so they're doing the Estes method clearly. The ghost's name was Steve, and he was high as a kite.
Oh, my word.
He really wanted to talk to the girls.
So apparently there's drugs on the other side.
I don't know.
It's the first I've heard of something like that.
Well, it makes you wonder because he seems to be doing something intelligently, maybe.
Right.
So, I mean, if he died from drugs at the hotel, does this in the afterlife, do you remain high or drunk if that's what you were when you died? I mean,
I don't know.
Or is this really something residual? Because here's the rest of the story. It's very interesting. Normally, this would just seem random, but the last time we stayed in this room was for New Year's Eve, 2016. A big group of our friends stayed at the hotel to ring in the new year, and we all headed up to our room at the end of the night to continue the party. Everyone in the room was a familiar face. At some point, this random middle-aged guy named Steve opened the door and came into the room. He refused to leave. He kept going on about how high he was and how he wanted to talk to the girls.
What?
Our friend John escorted him out of the room with a little bit of a struggle. He ended up sneaking back in for a second time when someone opened the door to leave, and we eventually called hotel security. It was a little unsettling. The next day, there was not a trace of him in the hotel or lobby. It was like he appeared out of nowhere.
So I wonder if it was residual.
I don't know. And I mean, he clearly was something physical because he gets escorted out by another guy. Security comes and takes him, so it's like he was not a ghost at that time.
Yeah, that seems pretty strange. It's like he was corporeal, and so I think he was probably alive at that time, and somehow he passed shortly thereafter, and now it's residual.
Especially because with the haunting activity here at the 2019 event, he's not there physically. He's just talking through the
Spirit box. Yes.
She continues, I don't have any logical explanation for this series of events, but there's no way anyone in that room could have known about Steve or the things he was saying on New Year's Eve in 2016. We never found out why the ghost was saying Keel's name over and over again, but we were more than a little freaked out. Keel probably more so than me. I walked into the weekend a skeptic and came out a believer. While I love the hotel, we didn't sleep a wink that night. It might be a little while before we return again. I will return. I've stayed there many times and the ghosts have never bothered me. What an amazing story.
Yeah, that's a great experience story.
And then continuing along this same vein, Julie Tremaine co-wrote Amy Bruni's book with her, and she was also on a Strange Escapes and wrote about it for Pace magazine, and she was actually staying in the suite.
I invited the remaining people back to the princess room for another investigation. There were maybe 20 of us in the room, including Bruni, Barry, Tenny, and Greg and Dana Newkirk. Dana pulled tarot cards while Tenny guided us through setting our intention and amplifying our collective energy. Bruni and Greg asked the questions in the EVP session. The princess is hard to make contact with, probably because so many people go there trying to talk to her. But whatever we were doing was working. Bruni started asking her about the gala events she used to throw at the hotel, especially about New Year's Eve, her biggest bash of them all. We started getting some real answers. Nothing too controversial, just about how much she loved those parties. But we really felt like we were talking to Princess Carolyn. As the mood in the room got lighter and lighter, those results were a big deal to all of us. We started hearing some knocks on the walls around us, and when we burst into laughter, the lights flickered. Someone else made a joke. We all laughed, and it happened again. This time the lights dimmed for a few seconds. At this point, I had been staying in the room for 36 hours, and I hadn't heard a single knock or seen those lights flicker even one other time. Then my eyes glanced down to the nightstand, the same one the head of housekeeping had talked about before. "Guys," I said, "look at that drawer." It was open 2 inches. I was standing close to that nightstand, so I would have known if someone had touched it. It really seemed like whatever had opened it for Mark had opened it for us too. We all looked at it for a few minutes, then pushed the drawer back in. Shortly after that, people started to filter out. I was staying, so I was behind everyone who was leaving. I turned around to make sure there were no stragglers, and that's when I saw it. The drawer was open again, only this time it was completely open. I had closed it myself. Dana came back inside and tried to do something that would make the drawer open on its own. We pushed it, pulled it, tested whether a coat could have been caught on it, jumped on the floor in front of it, walked heavily across the room towards it. Nothing moved it at all. "I need to get out of this room," I said to her. "I just need to use the bathroom first." "Okay," she said. "We'll wait for you in the hall." I closed the hotel room door, went into the bathroom, came out a minute or so later, and ran to the door. "Get back in here," I yelled. This time, the top drawer was open, and I had been completely alone in the room. There is no chance any living person did that.
Pretty crazy with that drawer there. We're going to have another story coming up. Same kind of thing. So I don't know if Carolyn is like constantly taking things in and out of drawers or what's going on with that. I love that they tried to test it just to make sure there's not something that can cause that to happen.
Absolutely. And we definitely need to add this onto our list of places we're going to travel to.
I know. It sounds like, I'm just looking at the pictures, it looks like such a cool hotel. So yeah, definitely a place I want to stay. This story was shared on the website Two Sisters Abroad. In 1997, I was working as a housekeeper and had to clean room 314, the princess's room. I went to service the room that newlyweds were staying in, and I knocked on the door and there was no answer. I opened the door, went in, and there was a little girl sleeping on the bed. Immediately, I went to the hallway to see my inspector and told her I couldn't clean the room because a little girl was sleeping. She said that was odd because the guests were newlyweds and nobody else was registered. She asked me to leave a note that I was coming back in an hour to service the room. Of course, wouldn't they be like, why did these parents just leave their kid here alone? I went back in the room to leave the note by the table. I walked in the room quietly so as not to wake the little girl up. When I looked at the bed, instead of a little girl, there was a woman staring right at me with the most scary smile on her face.
Yeah.
She had black hair and was wearing a white dress. I got chills down my spine and I just stood there frozen. She sat on the bed and kept staring at me. I ran out of the room and told my friend, who was also a housekeeper. We both went back in the room and there was no one there. I still have a hard time remembering that incident and I get chills every time I speak about it. I have many friends that have worked there and I've heard a lot of scary things that have happened. Oh, the day before this happened, my friend and I took pictures of ourselves on the princess bed. Everybody tells me that I made her upset by doing that.
Well, could be.
Maybe she didn't want you taking pictures in her room. But what's really interesting is, how did this have a little girl and then an older woman? Was this the same person?
Right.
And seeing it at different ages? Or is there a little girl ghost here? All these questions.
It's a mystery. The website also shared this experience from a bartender. I had a few experiences, but this is the one that stands out the most. A few summers ago, I was bartending in the Cave, which is the hotel bar. It was just after we opened, and I was standing on the side of the bar. No one was near the other end of the bar. The only people in the room were me, the other bartender, and the two guests that were standing and chatting with us. All of a sudden, we heard a loud thud at the opposite end of the bar, and a stack of teacups and saucers we had stacked underneath the bar came flying out at least 4 feet and smashed all over the place. No doubt in my mind there was a spirit in the room. The guests we were chatting with quickly finished up the conversation and left for the night. They never came back for a drink.
I'm not surprised. They're like, it's a little crazy in here. We're out. An anonymous commenter wrote about a stay she had in room 314 with her father in February 2021. So, I mean, these are really current experiences people are having. Now, when we got in the room, the TV was acting quite strange and it took a while to get it to work. We decided to head off to the pool, so my dad was on the bed and I was walking into the bathroom with my back turned to my father. I turned for a moment and saw the bottom drawer of the left side of the bed opened. This bedside table seems to be where the most paranormal stuff happens in the room. I changed in the bathroom, and as we went down to the pool, I met these kids about my age and told them all about the room, and they were really curious, so my dad and I showed them the room. We'd closed the drawer, and when we got up to the room, the drawer was opened again. The family left, and we laid down to watch some TV, and I started to feel uncomfortable, like I was being watched. And I turned my head, and I see ever so slightly the bottom drawer opening. I was super scared. Me and my dad decided to leave the room for a while, so we go to the lobby where we told a bunch of people all about our experience with the drawer in the room. The bartender comes up and asks if we're staying in room 314, and when we replied yes, he said, "Oh my gosh, you're not going to believe it, but 2 ladies just checked out and said that the drawers kept opening, and they kept getting tapped on the leg when they slept." Later, I was looking at the princess's picture in the lobby, and I said how it was a beautiful portrait. Then I felt a hand move across my hair really fast, almost like my mother was playing with my hair. I turned around and no one was there. I was in total shock. I couldn't believe what just happened. We decided to go back into the room, and I was sitting near the fireplace with some chips. I went to put the chips away, so I leaned over the bed and saw that the 2 bedside drawers were open. And then in the morning, as we were saying goodbye, the drawer opened as if she was saying goodbye.
That's very cool.
Yeah, clearly these drawers opening is paranormal activity that is happening in there. No doubt about it. I don't know if it's residual, if it's intelligent, but there's something about those drawers.
It seems intelligent because it completely happens as a response when people are noticing it.
Yeah.
The Mount Washington Hotel is still a grand hotel, and the setting is so beautiful with Mount Washington in the background with its usual snow-capped peak. It could be a scene out of a travel book, or a scene from a Stephen King novel. Is Mount Washington Hotel haunted?
That is for you to decide. Sure sounds like it to me.
Yes, indeed.
And the fact that this is probably Amy Bruni's favorite place to investigate, I'm sold on it.
Yeah, it makes me want to get there even more.
And I mean, these experiences were not, well, we had a cold spot, the lights were flickering on and off. These are very distinct things that have happened. I mean, like Adam with that woman.
Right.
It's a crazy story. And that's pretty current. I mean, we've got our ghost in sweatpants.
Right.
That's pretty good. And then if this Steve would have shown up, he probably would have been wearing, T-shirt and jeans or something like that. And that story, I have so many questions about.
I know.
It's just, and the fact that he was kept asking for Keel, even though he didn't know them. So he crashes this party twice, It's like, how does he know that guy's name and to be calling out for him or whatever?
Yeah, I feel like it's probably not residual since he was calling his name.
Yeah, just really strange. Love this. Fabulous. Something else that's fabulous is our website. We encourage you to head over to historygoesbump.com. And if you'd like to send us some feedback, you can do that at historygoesbump@gmail.com or on any of our different social media sites. If you're not following us at them, please do so. We've got YouTube. We have Instagram, Twitter, or X, I guess is what they're calling it now, our Facebook group. I do have a TikTok channel, but I really don't do much with it. I'm not really into the TikTok thing as much. Kelly, while we were doing the anniversary show, Ed Jones let us know that he was going to be going to the Hotel del Coronado. And we said, well, if anything happens, please let us know. And we've heard back from him. Good morning. I hope you and Kelly are doing well. My wife and I did the ghost tour at Hotel del Coronado, and let me first say it was great. The guide was full of knowledge, and you could tell she was passionate about the property. No theatrics, just the history and ghost stories. Perfect. That's the way we like it.
Absolutely.
It was only supposed to be an hour, but it lasted an hour and a half. After the tour, my wife and I used the restroom. After she came out, she had a look on her face that I've not seen before. She said one of the toilets down from her just flushed, and she was the only one in there. She said she even checked again to make sure she was alone. I could tell it kind of spooked her. She enjoys ghost tours, but she's not like the rest of us. I'm the one who paid for the tour, and she's the one who gets an unusual experience. You ladies have all the luck.
Well, it's the women's restroom. I mean, these days you could just walk in there and use it too, so.
Well, that's true. And I mean, they're pretty much letting anybody go in the restrooms these days. So yeah, and, maybe you guys should start checking out the ladies' restrooms more often because clearly those are the ones that are haunted. We also wanted to congratulate Sarah, who is going to be getting married this upcoming Saturday.
Yes, indeed. Congratulations, Sarah.
Best wishes for your nuptials, and they're going to be honeymooning for 2 weeks throughout the South, hitting all kinds of spooky places during spooky season. I mean, Savannah, New Orleans, Mobile, St. Augustine in October.
Perfect.
Want to thank you guys for joining us on this episode. I've been your host, Diane.
And this has been Kelly.
You take care now. Bye-bye. This episode has been brought to you by our executive producers.
Join me in the cemetery by becoming an executive producer. You can join on Patreon or PayPal. Check out the Support the Show tab on the website for more information.